Hey guys, how you doing? This is JP Kolia coming to you once again with another episode of Age of Heroes, my podcast. And today, first of all, I want to say thank you for supporting this channel, for supporting the podcast. It's always a pleasure to take time to do these videos and also to record the podcast, so I can talk about things that really matter to all of us. Matter things about comic books, about toys, collectibles, but also about life. It's important to share life with people because it's not everything about collectibles. It's not everything about comics or the hobbies that we enjoy. Also, it's about life, about sharing life and enjoying life and living to the fullest. I think we all have to live to the fullest. Now, as we go through Toy Fair, I love Toy Fair. 2019, it's definitely a great year. There's been a lot of reveals in Toy Fair. Of course, I'm not in New York City. I cannot get to Toy Fair because I don't have enough followers really to apply, to have a pass. But hopefully next year, you never know. I would love to see Toy Fair. I would love to go there, and which is surprising that some people have channels that they have a lot less viewers than I, and they make it to Toy Fair. But of course, probably they many of them they have their own. They're involved into the toy business. Perhaps they own a business, and like in this case, as a toy company or a comic book place and all stuff like that. So they make it, or they have friends. I don't know. It doesn't happen to me. I wish I have those friends. You never know. Next year, I would like to go there. So later throughout the week, I'm going to put all together a video. You see a video where I talk about the highlights to me, the things that I really like, and the things that probably you also pay attention or you like, or maybe you haven't had the chance or the time to do it. I'm gonna put everything together, at least the things that I think are great for us, for the people that follow me, and the things that I personally like, I think they're the greatest things. So stay tuned for that. But today, and talking about toys, and also talking about other things, and sharing life, because that's the point of this podcast, is to share life. I want to talk about something that I've been thinking throughout the weekend, and I've been thinking about that. And that's the title, of course, of this podcast today, which is reality versus expectation versus reality. We all have expectations. There's nothing wrong with having high expectations. I think it's good that we make goals, we make plans, and that we expect things to work out the way we want them. That's what we do. As human beings, we get into something with the expectation or the desire for that to work. You get into a marriage expecting for the marriage to work. You get to a job expecting to succeed in that job. You buy stuff expecting for things to work out. When you buy something, you expect that to work. When I purchased even this, I would say this microphone, I expected to work. At first, it had a lot of problems trying to synchronize it and trying to use it. It wasn't yet as user-friendly as it seems. So we want things to work. And also we want to buy what is, being shown to us. And talking about Toy Fair in that matter, about toys and collectibles and statues, and even movies, even anything, video games. We always have this expectation of something because of what has been shown to us and we were sold to, and we want this to work that way. However, and this is a big however, sometimes things don't work that way. And we are confronted with the reality that what we were sold to, or the things that we wanted to, didn't, deliver what was promised or what we thought it was promised. And of course, that brings frustration. Now, as I mentioned in previous podcasts, it's important to deal with frustration. I dealt with that. There was a video where I talk about the things that people need to know before getting into statue collecting, the 7 things that they need to do. And definitely there's something that I want to give here too in this podcast, which is dealing with frustration, dealing with that, understanding that reality and expectation are 2 different things. Expectation is, something that we in our minds, we build this idea, or we create this concept of something based on information, based on what has been told to us or what we had seen before. But when we realize that there's a lot of things around it that we were not told, or probably we, pretty much didn't pay attention to, that are there. Like, for example, when I purchased this microphone, I follow a lot of reviews online. Of course, I watch a lot of videos. People say it's great. It's one of the best, better than anything else before, anything else for the price. It was a great price in comparison to others, and it was much better features. It's a great brand. And when it got here, I realized that there were a lot of things that I needed to do in order to make it work the way I wanted. So my expectations were higher than the reality of the product. I'm not saying that it's a bad product. It's a great microphone. I'm not a reviewer of electronics, but if I have to, believe me, I will give it a 10. But when it came out, I definitely was, I would say, and it was a 5 because I didn't know exactly how to manage it. So you work with that. And that works with everything, with a computer, with a game system, with electronics, with anything you purchase in life, a car. There's always this expectation. You're sold into this advertisement. And of course, everything looks so fine and everything looks so good. But when the reality hits, when you start to use the product, then you realize that it's not as good as you thought it was. Or some things come your way that are not looking as good as or as great as they look in the prototype. And that's something that we need to understand. And particularly with collectibles, particularly with statues and action figures. I do see that a lot. I personally, I do follow a lot of forums. I go to different places. I like to be on the know. Maybe I'm nosy, but I like to be on the know about what's happening in the collectible world in action figures. Although I'm not a big action figure collector, I love action figures because action figures actually brought me to statues. I was an action figure collector since I was a kid, like most of you. When Todd McFarlane was created in my teenage years, I collected Todd McFarlane stuff, Spawn figures, which definitely created a market for a more high-end quality or more realistic action figures. And of course, many companies came after that. You got Soda, which no longer exists, but I think they still exist, but they don't. I don't know. It's just, you never know with them. You have NECA. You have all kind of companies nowadays, Diamond Select, all these figures which are realistic in comparison to like Playmates back in the day or even Mattel back in the day. So all these companies are competing for your pocket, and they're competing for your hard-earned money. And of course, they pushing all this, particularly franchises that we love, like Dragon Ball, or anime stuff, or anything, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, all of that, He-Man, Master of the Universe, Marvel, DC, so Star Wars, so many great franchises out there, gaming franchises too. So they're competing for your money. They want our money. And of course, they delivering that. And of course, all these events like Toy Fair, like, San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con are great events for them to showcase what you like, the things that, they want to sell to you. And of course, everything looks so neat. Everything looks great. The paint application is the best. The figures, the articulation is bar to none. Everything looks great. However, you have to remember that everything you see that is showcased in most of these cons or conventions or exhibitions are just prototypes. Those figures are made out of clay. They're not the actual product that you see that is coming to you. And also, the paint application has been done by a professional painter, a person that does that for a living, not, as a professional for prototypes. And I have a lot of friends that they're painters, they're prototype painters, and they are phenomenal painters. That reminds me that I have a statue that I need to review that is for the Sabertooth that we did as a special project with Eric Sosa. And I showcased years ago just the prototype and also have the unpainted kit. But I want to show you the painted kit. And it came to me a couple of months ago, I think a month ago. And I haven't shown it, and I will show you. So stay tuned for that video as well. When we get the time, we'll do it so you can see the final product. It was painted by a prototype maker. It was painted by a professional. So yes, it looks better than, something that you get from the box out of the company. And of course, this always is a sad part, or maybe it's one thing, it's one of the low key areas in statue collecting, also action figure collecting. And there's something that I'm mentioning this because, I follow Super 7, which is the company that has been producing or took after Matty Collectors folded, after Mattel decided not to do anything else with Masters of the Universe through Matty Collector, which was a phenomenal line with even some troubles here and there, but it was a phenomenal line. Super 7 picked up the slack. They picked up the tab and they said, we're going to produce more action figures for Masters of the Universe, and also we're going to create a new line for the more animated or the animation style Masters of the Universe, He-Man figures. And of course, they've been doing it, and they've been doing great stuff. They've been showing a lot of great prototypes, and they have done a lot of great things. However, there's been some people that have complained, which obvious reasons for some of the failures of the company or some of the pieces that have come to their hands, or they're not as they were shown. And of course, there's a back and forth. Of course, it means that you have to contact the company to get a product, to get in this case a replacement, which can take a little while. But also, people were complaining about the stuff that has been shown, and it's been taking 6 months for that to be released. I want to wade into this situation because sometimes I feel that people don't fully understand what it implies to create these product lines. And we're going to start from point A, and then we go to point B, and then point C. When you go to a convention, many of these companies are showing prototypes. Again, they are prototypes made with clay, or they're made with resin, in the statues in this case. They're not fully produced. They are not being manufactured in any factory yet. There are just the prototypes that have been shown, that they still are waiting for approval, because the approval process to get a piece or any statue or action figure into production, it's lengthy for some companies, particularly for Marvel or even DC. They're companies that they don't let go of their licenses so easily. So they have to go through the process of approval. And once things are approved, of course, you have to send this to production. And that the approval alone can take months, just the approval alone, because you send your product, you send in this case an application, you fill an application for an approval, and they're not going to answer you right away, because we're talking about a licensee or the license department of Marvel or DC, of any other company. They have multiple, they're dealing with multiple licenses or multiple people applying for a license worldwide. Marvel is such a goal mine. People want to produce products for Marvel because people buy the stuff. So they're not going to just simply let it go. People go from work, they work for these departments. They work like a regular job, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. They deal with a lot of licenses. There's a lot of paperwork. You have to fill this out. You have to fill that out. You have to bring lawyers into the process to create a contract and all of that. So they're not going to just do it just because one single collector wants things done pretty much overnight. They're not going to do it for $15 that you're paying for an action figure. I'm sorry. I know that you think you're valuable enough, or I'm valuable enough, but, as human beings, I know God values me and God values you. But for the rest of the world, it's not the case. So they just take their time. And once these get approved, you have to send the prototype to China, because that's when the manufacturing is located, where the factories are located. And it has to go through the process where they have to really design or redesign some things, because sometimes some things don't really go into production. Yes, it was done easily when you're doing something by hand, when you're doing just the clay form. But when you have to bring it into fruition through the molding process and to bring everything through the casting process of bringing all the parts together, you realize that there's a lot of difficulty to do it. And so there's a technical aspect where you have to bring engineers that they have to really redevelop sometimes the figures to make it doable for the whatever you want. And of course, that makes some changes. And of course, then it goes into the process of manufacturing. And then nothing is perfect in manufacturing. Nothing comes out as expected. And then, of course, it has to go through the process of painting. Most of the stuff is hand painted. So it's a lengthy process. And sometimes it means that your company have to have people in China. You have to pay people to go there to maintain the QC, the quality control. And sometimes, it's a lot of money. You're talking about a lot of money involved in the process for a lot of these companies. And sometimes the pre-orders are not up to par. People are not pre-ordering stuff. So it is difficult for a lot of these companies to survive. And of course, sometimes, I'm not saying that all the pieces come bad. Some pieces have problems. They come with issues. Particularly in statues, you're going to see a lot of the stuff is hand-painted. And because it's hand-painted, it means that some person had to grab it and paint it by hand. Believe me, you expect someone to be a professional painter doing it, and somebody that is working just for a paycheck and just painting this stuff as much as they can, and they're good at it. But believe me, you wouldn't do it better than them. You can grab some crayons and try to paint a statue or a kid. Like, that's the reason why I had Sabertooth someone painted, because I'm not a painter, even though I like to paint, and I think that I can do a good job doing it. I want someone that does for a living. So I hire a professional to do it. But the price is not cheap. It is not cheap to have a professional paint something. These factories don't have these professional painters that went to painting school, or they went to college for the arts, and things like that. So there are people that are learning. It's an office. There's just a job. They learn to do it. They get better at it. And of course, a lot of the factories, they have the specific painters for specific jobs. Some are more professional than others. Some are better than others that are more experienced. So they get the production done and everything's done, and they pack it and they send it. And sometimes it's going to be one that is just wrong. It's one that is just bad. Sadly, and this is a big sadly, sometimes they end up in the wrong hands. And the person that is the most outspoken, the most bitter about situations, and that's the person that is going to go to the forums and is going to speak out his mind, is going to say things. Sadly, a lot of times people go and speak up their mind even before they have contacted the company for help. And of course, they expect the company to accept this and say, well, this and that. And sometimes, some representatives of the company, they're tired because they're not dealing only with you, they're dealing perhaps with 100 more like you. And you know what? You have to look at numbers. Yeah, you have a production perhaps of 10,000 pieces. And from those 10,000 pieces, I don't know, 300 came wrong, which is a number, it's a good number. It's not as bad when you look at the big numbers of some of these production lines. So you got a few people that are disgruntled. And from this 300, perhaps 100 get just complaining about it. While the other ones, they just go through the route of just getting a replacement. And of course, it becomes a big deal, because you expand things and you multiply that many, many times. I went through the same problem when I'm just talking about me, when I went into the production of Sabertooth with my friend, with Tony. We went into production. We sold a lot of those kits. Well, we did some kits for people. And it was one person that complained about the kit because it was not to his expectation. This person, they have no experience with kits. He didn't read the line. He didn't read the information. He wanted to know why in the world some things didn't work the way he wanted them to work, or he was expecting something bigger. And I told him, I'm sorry, this is a kid. This is not a made statue. I'm not making statues. I'm making kids. So you have to put them together. You have to glue them together. You have to paint them together. That's the purpose. And if you don't know how to do it, then hire a professional to do it. This is not, a statue. A fully painted statue. And of course, he went into the upheaval about it, saying this and that he bought it for somebody else and blah, blah, blah. It got so upset with the guy. And I told him, you know what? I'm going to give you your money back. And I gave him the money back, and I didn't ask him even for the piece back or for the kit back. It's like, just keep it. Just because I was tired of dealing with a person that has no understanding of what I was saying from the get-go. And kids are kids. There's a kid is a kid. It's a piece that it needs to be polished, it needs to be clean, it needs to be all put together. And that's why you hire a professional to do it, or you do it yourself. That's what kids are. That's what a prototype kit for a piece is. And there's nothing major. It's like when you purchase those little kits for the cars that you put all together, the little pieces, you have to put all the pieces together. You have to glue them yourself. You're the one doing the work. That's the beauty of kits. But this person didn't get it. Well, you know what? I'm not going to deal with that nonsense. So I just give him the money back and let it go. I'm not going to deal with that no more. It was just one single person. From every person that got a kit, everything else was fine. And I'll show you the kit when I painted, and you're going to see how beautiful it was. The work that we did. And I have a video where I have shown how the kit was initially. And that's the same kit. But of course, there's always going to be someone that is dissatisfied with the end product. And that was just my case. One single person. Now, point that, now imagine a company that is dealing with hundreds, thousands of customers. You amplify that number and you realize how much a hassle it is for a lot of these people. And particularly, it's companies like Super 7, which is a small company. Even though they're pushing the hard, they put the hard-earned money, they invested in to continue this line. And they're trying to do as much as they can. And that doesn't mean that everything comes out the way it is. And of course, some people complain, and I was just watching a Pixel Dan video over the weekend where, he's interviewed by Pixel Dan, and of course, the guy, the owner of Super 7, he's expressing some of his frustration. And of course, people on the notes are already criticizing him, saying that he's a douche, he's this and that, because this and that. And in my mind, it's like the guy is just trying to run a company. And he's frustrated with people that don't understand the process of this. Yes, companies go through different processes. Yes, you promise something. That doesn't mean that it's going to be delivered. But he even said it in that video. If you don't like it, then call customer service so you can return it. Or we can do an exchange. Go through the channels instead of just going through social media and trying to attack a person and trying to call him a liar. Because this is the thing. A lot of people do not know how to express, in a concise manner, in a respectful manner, their feelings. I'm sorry, put your feelings aside and use your mind, use your thought process. If you're going to attack a person in the personal level, if you're going to call a person a liar, don't expect that person to treat you with the same level of respect. And that's what happened here. If you're calling a person that he is a douche, don't expect that person to treat you with respect. It's just bottom line. If you mistreat me and you talk to me like that, I'm going to talk to you like that back. I'm a person that I'm a feisty person, and I'm a respecter. I respect people, and as long as you respect me, I will respect you. The same happens here. The problem is that we have gone in this new era of social media, and I've mentioned this before, we have gone from being nice to be, jerks online. We are jerks with people. This people is doing a job, and there's a lot involved in the process of these companies and manufacturing. The expectations are too high sometimes for us. We have to limit our expectations. We have to understand this. I can tell you one thing, and getting closer to the end of this podcast. I remember when I was a kid, I love action figures. We all have these memories of the action figures we grew up. I grew playing the G.I. Joe, the Star Wars figures, Ghostbuster figures, He-Man, Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, all those wonderful figures that we had, and the quality and all that, and we play all these things. Of course, we talk about them, we glorify them, we do all of this. We say, oh, those are the greatest toys ever made. They're strong, they're big, and all that. Now, with years come by, and we go back to those toys, we realize a lot of the, some things are good from those figures, but we compare them with the new figures that we have nowadays. You realize that they're not as great as we thought they were. Yes, now we can see them from a perspective of, okay, now I'm in my 40s. When I was 10, they were the greatest things ever. These figures were awesome. But now I'm 40, and now I can compare it to something new. It might be lighter, but there's a lot of improvements to the quality, to the molding. They're closer to the characters on screen. They look like them. In this case, the articulation is amazing. We have come a long way technologically. There's a lot of improvements over the old one, but because nostalgia, we're looking at the old one as the best thing, and we don't see the improvements here. Doesn't mean that the figures are going to be perfect. Doesn't mean that everything is going to please everybody. No. It's going to be challenges. It's going to be difficulties. Sometimes things don't match what we want. And if we return it, we expect for the next thing, because believe me, it's going to be someone else that's going to pick up that, and it's going to produce something that is more to our liking. There's no need to get salty about it. There's no need to get, attack people because of that, because that makes us look like jerks. And that's something that, it came to the point that companies are going to say, you know what, it's too much hassle to deal with this. So we just drop this, move on to the next thing, to a different line. So believe me, when Mattel decided to let go, if it wasn't for Super 7, we would not have any more figures for the Masters of the Universe. It was them that decided they saw the necessity and they took it. But what doesn't mean they will have it forever. They're also going to get tired. Companies get tired of dealing with some customers, and they just move on to the next thing. They sell the company, they move on, and the company that comes and takes over say, you know what, there's no need for this. We're going to move to something that makes more money. So at the end of the day, we lose because our complaining and because our whining. We need to stop, being whiners and being realistic. Be realistic about what we expect. I'm not saying here that expect garbage. If there's something that is garbage, then mention it. Say it. I'm sorry, but this is not what I was promised. Send it back. Return it. Get my money back. But do it with respect and honor people, because they're doing their job. They're not there to stiff you or to take your money. Realize this: when you're pre-ordering something, the time that it takes is not a promise that it's going to be next week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 months, 3 months. It can take 6 months. It can take a year. And in statues, sometimes it can take years until something is released. Keep that in mind. It's on the notes down below. It says, the release time is not promised. Nothing is promised in life. Nothing is promised. So if you really want it, then just follow the line. But remember, follow what they ask you to do what they ask you to do, put the money down, whatever. But remember, you were not promised a date. You were not promised something. Even the final product might not match what the product that was shown on the exhibit. So keep that in mind. So what is your opinion? I know that there's a lot to take. I'm not trying to be here. I'm playing devil's advocate in many ways. I'm not trying to be on one side or the other. But I do feel that sometimes our expectations are too high for what reality is. We need to kind of, have milder expectations and, enjoy the hobbies that we have for what they are. Just simply hobbies, entertainment, fun things to do, instead of just making it seem like it's just a dead of life situation where if we don't get something, then we're going to get a heart attack and the world's going to end. It's not going to change. It's not going to affect anything else because, life goes on and, some pieces that are not made well now will be, well made later on by someone else. So keep that in mind. So once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for taking time to watch this podcast. If you're doing through YouTube, if you're listening through iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker, thank you very much. Please share the podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification button so you're reminded of the video and the podcast. And also consider supporting this channel and the podcast through Patreon and also through PayPal. All the links are down below. So once again, thanks for listening and God bless you. Talk to you again. Bye-bye.